The night was loud inside the bar, full of men laughing, glasses hitting the tables, and smoke curling up to the ceiling. The place smelled of sweat, beer, and arrogance. Nobody expected trouble, but trouble was already there, waiting in silence. In the middle of the bar stood a woman who did not belong, her calm eyes scanning the room, as if she knew something none of them did. She was young, strong, and carried herself with a quiet grace. Her skin glowed under the dim lights, her hair tied neatly behind her head, and her shirt tied at the waist. She did not laugh, she did not drink. Instead, she stood at the counter, sipping water slowly, while every man around watched her like a puzzle they could not solve. Some laughed at her stillness, some whispered that she was too proud. Others thought she was easy prey. None of them knew the truth. The biggest man in the bar stepped forward. He was taller than most, his arms heavy with muscle, his head bald and shining under the lamp. He had tattoos crawling up his neck, scars along his arms, and a sneer carved across his face. Everyone knew him as the biker who ruled this place with fists, threats, and broken bones. He enjoyed seeing fear in the eyes of others. That night, he wanted to see fear in hers. He grabbed the front of her shirt with one hand and pulled her close. The room went silent, glasses halfway to lips, chairs frozen in place. His strength was obvious, his intention cruel. He wanted to mock her, to show the others how weak she was. He leaned close, his voice low and sharp, promising pain if she dared to resist. The woman did not flinch. She did not look away. Instead, she stood taller, her gaze steady, her breathing calm. It was as if she was waiting for him to make a mistake. The purse, as if she was waiting for him to make a mistake. Biker yanked harder, tearing open part of her shirt. Gasps rose from the men behind him. Some chuckled, expecting shame, expecting tears, expecting her to break. But what they saw instead froze the entire bar. Across her chest, bold and unshakable, was a tattoo. Not just ink, but a symbol of something greater, something heavy with history. It was the emblem of the Marine Corps' sharp lines and proud wings spread across her skin. The biker's smirk vanished as his eyes locked on it, and the others behind him forgot to breathe. The room felt colder now, though the lights had not changed. The men who once laughed now exchanged uneasy looks. Every one of them knew what that symbol meant. Discipline, strength, sacrifice, a life of training that no bar fight could ever match. This was not some woman standing alone. This was a Marine, a warrior who had faced worse than any of them could imagine. The biker's hand trembled slightly, though he tried to hide it. His grip loosened, though he did not mean it to. The woman had not raised a hand, yet the balance of power had already shifted. Her voice cut through the silence, calm and measured, but with the weight of steel. She asked him if he truly wanted to test what that tattoo meant. Her words were not loud, but they struck deeper than any shout. Every man in the bar could feel it. It was not a question. It was a warning. She stared into his eyes, unblinking, unafraid, as if she could already see the outcome. The biker shifted his weight, his pride pulling him one way, his fear pulling him another. His men behind him stayed silent, unwilling to move. The bar was no longer his stage. It belonged to her. The biker forced a laugh, but it cracked halfway through. He tried to speak, but the words caught in his throat. The woman did not need to fight him. She did not need to raise her fists. Her presence, her calmness, and that tattoo had already broken him in front of everyone. What he wanted to use for mockery had become his own defeat. Around them, the silence stretched long and sharp, until even the sound of glasses settling back on wood felt heavy. The unexpected war had begun, and none of them were ready for it. The biker's hand finally let go of her shirt, his fingers shaking, though he tried to hide it. He stepped back half a pace, his eyes darting left and right, as if searching for support from the men around him. But the support he expected did not come. His crew stood frozen, their confidence cracked, their leader exposed. None of them wanted to be the first to move against the woman with the marine tattoo. The bar was filled with whispers now. Some muttered about the symbol, others stared at the woman in silence. The weight of her presence had shifted the air. No longer was she just a stranger in their world. She had become something larger, something that reminded them of battles and wars they never fought, of discipline they never lived. Each man there felt small, as if their bravado had been stripped. Away in one glance, the bartender, a heavy man with tired eyes, leaned forward carefully, his hands gripping the counter. He had seen many fights in this place, seen bottles smash and fists fly, but this was different. He studied the woman as though she carried more danger than the whole gang combined. His voice was low but steady as he asked her if she wanted him to call the police. The woman did not answer. She only shook her head once, slow and calm. She did not need anyone else to fight her battles. The biker clenched his fists at his side, his pride twisting inside him like a blade. He could feel the stares of his crew, their trust slipping. He had built his reputation on fear, on showing strength no one dared to challenge. Yet here stood a young woman, unarmed, untouched, and already she had undone what he spent years building. His jaw tightened. His chest rose and fell with ragged breaths. He wanted to strike her, to take back what he thought he lost. But every time his eyes fell to the tattoo, his fists weakened. The woman finally spoke again. Her words were sharper, this time cutting through the crowd like steel. She told him that strength was not about how loud a man could shout or how hard he could grab. Strength was about control, about sacrifice, about standing firm when the world wanted you to break. Her voice carried no anger, only truth, and that truth stung every man who heard it. Some lowered their eyes. Others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The biker ground his teeth, unable to speak. One of the younger men in the crowd stepped forward, his face pale but his eyes wide with curiosity. He asked her if the tattoo was real, if she was truly a Marine. She turned her gaze on him, and he froze as if her answer was already written on his skin. She didn't need to say much. Her nod was enough. The boy stepped back quickly, as though he had touched fire. The silence returned, heavier than before. The biker finally broke it with a roar, slamming his fist on the counter so hard the glasses rattled. He shouted that this was his bar, his rules, and no tattoo would change that. But his voice cracked, the strength he wanted to show leaking away into desperation. The men behind him did not cheer this time. They only stared, unsure of who he was anymore. Doubt had already poisoned the air, and it was spreading fast. The woman did not flinch at his roar. Instead, she stepped closer, her presence filling the space between them. She leaned forward just enough so he could see the calm fire in her eyes. She whispered a single sentence that only he could hear. No one else knew the words, but they saw the effect. His eyes widened, his face drained of color, and for a moment his body swayed as if struck by a blow. He stumbled back, bumping into the men behind him, who caught him awkwardly. The mighty biker had been broken by a whisper. The woman straightened her shirt, tying the knot tighter. She looked around the bar, meeting every pair of eyes that dared to meet hers. She saw the fear, the doubt, the shame. But she also saw something else: respect. For the first time, the men who once mocked her now held their breath in her presence. She had not thrown a punch, she had not lifted a weapon, but she had fought and she had won. And the war was only beginning. The biker's pride was bleeding, even though no blood had touched the floor. His men looked at him differently now. They had once followed him like shadows, but in that moment, their eyes betrayed doubt. He felt it like knives pressing into his back. The silence of his crew was worse than any insult. It meant they no longer believed in him. And disbelief was the one thing he could not afford. He tried to stand taller, flexing his arms as if size alone could win the fight. But the more he puffed up, the smaller he seemed against the calm woman in front of him. She hadn't lifted. A hand hadn't stepped out of place, yet her stillness was louder than his fury. It was as though she carried a battlefield inside her chest, and he knew he was not strong enough to step onto it. The younger men behind him began whispering, not to mock her, but to question him. One muttered that he had never seen their leader hesitate. Another said that the tattoo wasn't just for show, it carried weight, it carried proof. The words spread like sparks, and soon the whole bar was full of quiet murmurs. The biker heard them all. His anger rose, but it was tangled with fear, and fear made him reckless. He lunged forward, slamming his fist into the wooden counter instead of her, splintering the edge with brute force. The sound made the glasses jump and beer spill onto the floor. Some men flinched, but the woman didn't move. Her eyes stayed locked on him, her jaw steady, her body grounded like stone. His show of strength had failed again. The only thing his fist had broken was his own mask of control. The woman spoke, her tone sharp but calm, like a commander addressing soldiers. She told the bar that real battles weren't fought with noise and broken furniture. Real battles were fought within, where courage and fear wrestled for dominance. She looked at each man in turn, her gaze cutting into their pride, showing them the truth they had buried under bravado. Some shifted uncomfortably, others lowered their eyes. A few looked at her with something new respect. The biker's face turned red. He could not let this continue. If she won this war without throwing a punch, he would be nothing but a story of shame whispered in dark corners. His pride screamed for him to strike her, to end it with brute force. His knuckles tightened, and his chest heaved. But when he raised his hand, something unexpected happened. One of his own men grabbed his wrist. The entire bar gasped. Never before had anyone dared to stop him, not even his closest allies. But now one of his crew, a man younger, smaller, with trembling hands, held him back. Not her, the man whispered, his voice thin but clear enough for all to hear. She's not like the others. The biker stared in shock, his mouth opening but no words forming. His own power was slipping, not by her fists, but by his crew's shifting loyalty. The woman tilted her head slightly, her expression calm. She said nothing, for she didn't need to. The bar itself spoke for her. The men who once cheered the biker now stayed silent. The respect that once belonged to him now leaned toward her. The fight was no longer between two bodies. It was between two symbols, fear and respect, and fear was losing ground. The biker ripped his hand free from his follower's grip, rage boiling in his eyes. But his movements were slower now, his steps heavy. His fury had no audience left. To fuel it, the room wasn't with him anymore. The woman stood unmoved, her tattoo glowing under the lights like an unshakable mark of truth. For the first time in his life, he understood that strength was not his alone. And that truth burned him more than any fist could. The breaking point had come, not through violence, but through silence. His pride was cornered. His men doubted him. And the woman had planted something inside the bar that could not be removed, a code. Question each man now carried inside his chest. Who truly held the power here? The answer was clear, and it was not him. Asterisk, the air in the bar felt heavy, almost too thick to breathe. No one laughed now. No one dared to clap or cheer. All eyes remained locked on the woman, who stood unshaken. Her shirt pulled tight again, the tattoo still visible like a flame in the darkness. She had not raised her fists, but she had turned a room full of loud men into silent statues. Her silence was power, and the crowd knew it. The biker tried to force his pride back onto his shoulders, but it slipped each time he tried. His chest rose and fell as if he had been running for miles, yet he had not moved. His men no longer looked to him for strength. Their eyes had drifted elsewhere. They were drawn to the calm figure in front of them, to the quiet strength of someone who had lived through wars greater than this room could imagine. The woman finally spoke again, her voice steady, her tone almost teaching. She told them that tattoos were not decorations. They were marks of sacrifice. Each line of ink on her skin carried blood, pain, and the memory of brothers and sisters who never returned home. She said that strength was not about fists raised in bars, but about standing guard when the night grew darkest. Her words cut deeper than any blade. The men shifted uncomfortably, realizing their noise had always been hollow compared to the weight she carried. One of the men from the corner, older with streaks of gray in his beard, raised his hand like a student in a classroom. He asked her what it meant to live that kind of life, to wear a mark that demanded so much. She turned her eyes toward him, and for a moment, the bar felt like a place of learning, not of violence. She explained that it meant carrying scars, both seen and unseen, but never letting those scars become excuses. It meant holding the line, so others could live freely. Her words turned a rough bar into a hall of respect. The biker clenched his fists tighter, but his crew's attention was slipping away. Men who once bowed to his strength now leaned forward to hear her words. Even the bartender stood still, his rag frozen in his hand as if afraid to miss a single syllable. The woman was no longer just defending herself. She was transforming the room, shaping it with truths they had long forgotten. The bar had become her classroom, and every man there was her student. The biker slammed his fist against the counter again, desperate to draw their eyes back to him. But the echo of the strike was weaker now. It sounded less like power and more like a cry for help. His men barely reacted. Their attention was elsewhere, and he could feel it burning him alive. His rule had always been built on fear, but tonight fear was crumbling. Something new was taking its place, and he could not stop it. The woman took a step forward, her boots firm against the floorboards. She asked the men if they truly believed strength was measured in broken bottles and bruised knuckles. She challenged them to think deeper, to see strength in control, in discipline, in respect. She reminded them that warriors were not the loudest men in the room, but the ones who carried their battles in silence and rose again, no matter how heavy the weight. Her words were sharper than knives, and they pierced the hearts of everyone. Listening, the younger biker who had spoken earlier nodded slowly, his eyes wide. He said out loud that their leader had never made them feel this way, that he had never given them more than fear. His words sent a shock through the room. The biker turned toward him in rage, but the young man stood his ground, his voice trembling yet brave. "She makes us want to be more than just fighters," he said. The bar murmured in agreement, and the biker felt his power slipping away. Like water through broken hands, the woman did not smile, did not gloat. She knew this was not about humiliation, but about truth. She told them that respect was not given. It was earned every day through actions that carried weight. She lifted her chin slightly, the tattoo shining under the lights. It was proof enough. The men who once mocked her now lowered their heads, not in shame, but in respect. They had seen something rare that night, something their leader had never shown them. The biker's face twisted with anger and fear. He had never faced an enemy like this, one who fought with silence and words instead of fists. He could feel his throne crumbling beneath him, and he did not know how to stop it. The breaking point was already past. Now the woman's strength was rising like a tide, and nothing could hold it back. The biker's chest heaved with rage. He could feel his empire slipping away in front of his eyes. For years he had ruled this bar with nothing but fists and fear. Every man here had bowed their head when he entered. But tonight they looked past him. Tonight they stared at her. His pride could not take it, and his anger grew wild. He told himself that if he did not crush her now, his reign was finished. He lunged forward suddenly, faster than before, his fist raised high. The bar erupted with shouts. men stumbling back from the counter, but the woman did not move. She did not scream, she did not cower. She simply shifted her weight, stepped aside, and let his fist crash uselessly into empty air. His knuckles slammed into wood again, splintering it, blood smearing across the surface. He cursed loudly, pain shooting through his hand. The room gasped, not at his strength, but at his failure. The woman turned slowly to face him again. Her movements were calm, deliberate, like a soldier who had seen this all before. She did not strike back. She did not raise her fists. Instead, she spoke, her voice low but sharp enough to cut through the noise. She told him that violence was easy, that fists were tools for men who could not master themselves. Her words landed harder than his blows. The men around them felt it, and some even nodded, their loyalty crumbling further. The biker's pride was breaking. His breaths came heavy, his eyes darting around, desperate to find even one face that still believed in him. But all he saw were eyes filled with doubt. Even his closest crew members stood back, their shoulders slouched, their fear of him thinning. With every second, the power he had clung to for years was slipping through his hands like sand. He looked at her and realized with horror that she was not fighting for herself. She was teaching them all what strength truly meant. The young man who had spoken before stepped forward again. His voice was stronger now, steadier. He said out loud that they had followed the biker because they fear was the only way to live, but now they saw another path. He pointed at the marine tattoo on her chest and said that symbol stood for something greater than fists and fear. It stood for discipline, sacrifice, and courage. His words carried weight, and the crowd murmured in agreement. The biker's face twisted with rage and panic. He shouted at his men, calling them traitors, cowards, weaklings. He roared that this was his bar, his kingdom, and that no stranger could take it from him. His voice echoed off the walls, but it no longer held power. The men did not step forward to support him. They stood still, their silence louder than his shouting. The biker's eyes widened as the truth hit him. He was no longer their leader. The throne he thought he owned had been shattered, and he was the only one still clinging to its broken pieces. The woman stepped closer, her presence towering though she was smaller in frame. She looked him in the eye, unblinking, unwavering. She asked him if this was the life he truly wanted, to be feared but never respected. To be remembered as nothing more than a bully who ruled through weakness disguised as strength. Her words dug deep, tearing through the last of his pride. The bar leaned in, waiting for his answer. The silence was suffocating. The biker staggered back, his fists trembling, his chest heaving like a man drowning in his own shame. He tried to speak, but no words came. His voice cracked, his lips shook, and the room felt colder. At last he dropped his eyes, unable to hold her gaze any longer. The men around him exhaled slowly, as if they had been holding their breath for hours. The answer was clear, even without words. He was broken. His reign was over. The woman tightened her shirt again and turned her back on him, as if he no longer mattered. She addressed the room instead, telling them that true strength was not about breaking others down, but lifting yourself up. She said the bar could be more than a place of fear. It could be a place of brotherhood, of honor, if they chose it. Her words lit a spark inside them, and for the first time they saw a future not chained by fear, but guided by respect. The biker slumped against the counter, clutching his bleeding hand. His crew looked at him with pity, not fear. He was no longer the man who ruled them. The bar had found a new truth, and it came not from fists but from the voice of a woman who had carried real battles inside her skin. The final answer had been given, and it had ended all mockery. Asterisk. The bar was silent after the biker sank back into his chair, his hand bleeding, his pride shattered. The men who once cheered his every move now avoided his eyes. No one wanted to be tied to his fall. The sound of boots against the floor echoed softly as the woman stepped forward. Her calm presence filled the space more powerfully than any roar ever had. Every head turned toward her, not out of fear but out of something new: respect. She looked around slowly, meeting their eyes one by one. She didn't need to raise her voice, because the silence itself gave her every ear. She told them that respect could not be stolen or forced. It had to be earned through truth, through discipline, through actions that carried weight. She reminded them that tattoos like hers were not ink for vanity. They were reminders of sacrifice, of battles fought and lives lost, of strength carried. Not for glory, but for others. Her words settled on the room like heavy stones, unmovable and undeniable. The young man who had spoken earlier stepped closer, his face no longer pale but lit with determination. He said they had lived under fear for too long, that the biker had given them nothing but scars and silence, but she had given them something greater in just one night: hope. His words trembled at first, but when he finished, the bar nodded in agreement. The tide had fully turned. The room that once mocked her now stood behind her. The bartender finally found his voice. He cleared his throat and leaned forward, his eyes wide but steady. He asked her name. For a long moment she said nothing, letting the silence linger. Then she gave it, plain and simple, without pride, without need for applause. A name spoken without weight, but one that would be remembered by everyone in that room for the rest of their lives. It was not the name that carried power, it was the person behind it. The biker muttered curses under his breath, his voice broken, his tone stripped of the authority it once had. He tried to rise again, but his legs shook. No one reached out to help him. The men who once stood at his back turned their shoulders. His empire of fear had turned to dust. His eyes flicked to her one last time, but he could not hold her gaze. He lowered his head, defeated, a man swallowed by his own weakness. The woman turned away from him, her boots steady as she walked toward the door. Every step echoed with finality. But before she left, she turned back one last time. Her eyes scanned the room, firm but not unkind. She told them that strength was not about ruling others. It was about ruling yourself. If they wanted to be more than broken men in a broken bar, they would need to start tonight. She left them with those words, sharp and unforgettable. Then she walked into the night, leaving the door to creak shut behind her for a long moment. No one moved. The bar remained still, the men standing in silence, replaying her words in their heads. The biker sat slumped in the corner, forgotten, his shadow erased by the weight of her presence. The young man looked at his crew, his voice trembling as he said they could be better. They could change. And for the first time, no one laughed at such an idea. They nodded because they had seen what true strength looked like. They had seen respect born in a place where mockery once ruled. The bartender sighed deeply, shaking his head as though waking from a dream. He muttered that he had never seen a night like this before. He poured a drink, not to celebrate, but to mark the end of an era. The men around him lifted their glasses slowly, not for the biker, not for themselves, but for the woman who had turned their world upside down. She was gone, but her presence remained. Her words would echo in their minds long after the night faded. Outside, the woman walked into the cool air, the hum of the city wrapping around her. She did not look back. She did not need to. The bar was no longer her concern. She had left behind something stronger than bruises or broken bones. She had left behind respect. And that was more powerful than anything the biker had ever known. The war had ended, and with it came something new, a legacy carved not in violence, but in truth.